Pope Francis says the Catholic Church is under attack by the devil at a gathering of bishops over the weekend. There are investigations into sexual abuse by clergy in 13 different states, including the Diocese of Buffalo, New York. 60 Minutes spoke with members of Buffalo's Catholic community. They are revealing the scope of the efforts to cover for accused priests.
One of them was Father Fabian Maryanski. His file included an accusation that during the 1980s he had sexual relations with a girl that began when she was just 15. The diocese knew about it, but a note in the file argued Maryanski should be excluded from the list of problem priests. It said, "We did not remove him from ministry despite full knowledge of the case, and so including him on list might require explanation."
And I remember thinking, if that's the rationale for leaving a priest off, then how can I abide by this?
She was not alone. Father Bob Ziliaks advised the bishop on church law, including abuse cases. He told us he was disgusted by how the cases he saw were handled.
I think the hypocrisy, the lip service, yes, Bob, I agree with you, and then I would walk out of an office and nothing would happen.
Buffalo's Bishop Richard Malone declined to be interviewed. He did release a statement saying, in part, the church is in the eye of a storm, largely as a result of wrong decisions made decades ago. But our efforts have always remained steadfast, protect the children and reconcile with the victims. Siobhan O'Connor is a whistleblower who leaked hundreds of pages of documents detailing those cover-ups. Paul Snyder is a church deacon and the first clergy member to call on Bishop Malone to resign. They both join us at the table. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Siobhan, I should say, Paul said in the green room, people use the word hero, but you really, he says, are a true hero. It is not used lightly when it comes to you. I wonder if you could take us through your process on how you decided that you were going to leak the documents to the press, how you felt about Bishop Malone and how you reached the conclusion that you did.
Well, I worked for him for 3 years, and I really enjoyed working with him. I cared very deeply about him. I planned my whole life around his schedule. I didn't take vacations unless it worked for his schedule. Mm-hmm. So it was very painful for me to realize that how the diocese was handling this issue didn't match what people thought.
Mm-hmm. What were you seeing?
I was seeing that there were cases I had grave concerns about, and even back in March, early on, I would express those concerns, and he would just try to placate me in response.
What did he say?
Well, he would say that that's not your concern. He would say this is being handled. He would say, don't worry about it. But I couldn't help it because for me, the heroes in this story are the survivors. And I spoke to so many of them, and I so desperately wanted to help them. And it was when I realized the power of the media, actually, and the journalist, Charlie, with whom I worked, I saw that when he would email about something, all of a sudden action would be taken. And that's when I realized that I might need to do that. I would never have wanted to, and it was very painful, but I saw that it was necessary.
In this way, speaking to the press was incredibly helpful because it helped expose what the church was unwilling to address itself. Paul, when you became the first deacon to call for the bishop's resignation, did you hear from other people?
I did. I heard two things. First, that clergy were afraid to speak out. They were afraid of retribution by the bishop. They didn't know Siobhan was the whistleblower, but they and I thought she had brass and felt she had the kind of courage that we should follow. But we're living in a time in Buffalo where the type of activities that have taken place, we thought only occurred 70 years ago, 40 years ago. These abuses have happened now. Mm-hmm. And for a person such as Siobhan to have the courage to come forward to help our church find truth, everybody should be supporting her. And anyone who doesn't must not be seeking the truth.
Deacon, why is our church having such trouble finding the truth?
Silence, secrecy. We have had a culture of this throughout the Catholic Church for ages. Too much power and too few men, and those are the bishops. They need to be held accountable.
Why is Bishop Malone still on the job today, do you think?
Because, Gayle, he answers to an audience of one. That person is the Pope. Good or bad, however you feel about the Pope, only he can remove this bishop. What we are praying for, what I've asked for, and what so many others are asking for, is for bishops around the United States who have said no more, no tolerance, then act on those words and make this bishop leave this post.
Siobhan, you said the diocese has named 42 accused priests and say they will release a list of more. You say there are how many priests in total?
That there would be over 100 if the list was accurate. And having seen their draft lists and knowing how they crafted these criteria that resulted in a much smaller number, and yet I would speak to survivors who said, why isn't my abuser's name on that
Right.
list? So they
have
were
you talked to
re-victimized.
Bishop Malone? Has he reached out to you to say, how could you, why did you?
He has not. I have not spoken to him for several months, and while I know that that might be a painful conversation, I would not prevent it, because I would like to speak to him. He matters to me, and I struggle with that still. But I hope he would recognize that I had to do this for the survivors, for the diocese I love, and for the church I love. I want not only to be a whistleblower, but to be part of the reform and the renewal the church needs.
Right.
I'm so overwhelmed by your moral courage and clarity. I really am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Siobhan O'Connor is her name, and Paul Snyder.